Jalla, vuesta diekale godseot, vuesta diekale jalla. God wer, hoe gaast du, hoe vaarst du? Du gaast wenne. Wat drinkst du? Cider. Ah, hidre. Ich trinke Mehl. We alla drinkan Mehl hier. We alla drinkan Mehl, we alla sitten on ure Mehl drinkan we Mehl. Yeah. Today is Thursday. Yesterday was Wednesday. Today is Thursday. What were you cannot store? Yes. This is the Anglo-Saxon language. It's what the English language used to be 1,000 years ago. And I was talking about all of us drinking mead here together. Meodosetlach is the word for the mead benches. And the ancient Anglo-Saxons, the old people of England, like a lot of people all over the world, they told stories of a time, these ancient memories of a time when humans coexisted along with these other creatures, other races of beings, giants and little people, beings that were kind of human-like, but not quite human. Now, the Anglo-Saxons, they have writings about these beings, about a time when these giants walked the earth. There's a verse here, I haven't memorized it, so I'll have to read it, but it's from an ancient Anglo-Saxon document. It says, that means there was a time when these great cities were built. We can still see them from afar. These are the skillful works of the giants. Ent is the word for giant. J.R.R. Tolkien stole it for his own stories. And these cities, they still stand on this earth that we walk. They are the wondrous masonry work of the Ents, of the giants. That was written by the Anglo-Saxons in a document of their maxims, their stories, over 1,000 years ago. They talked about these ruins that were left by the Enta, by the giants that once walked this earth. A lot of people talk about this time when humans and monstrous, giant human-like creatures, when we lived together. And right here, in this land, in California, people told stories about this too. A few months ago here in this mead hall, I told a story from the Kwaimi people in the Cuyamaca Mountains. They tell a story of a long time ago when there were giants that lived up in the mountains, and these giants would prey on humans. They would steal their livestock and steal their women sometimes. And they told a story about a terrifying giant that would steal human women and kidnap them and enslave them up in the mountain where he lived. Now, I'm not going to repeat that story tonight, but you can read that story in my latest book of the Temecula Valley Legends. That story's in here, and a lot of others of Bigfoot-type creatures, hairy men, gnomes, and giants. And that story's in here. But tonight, of course, we're talking of stories from the north. So I have a different story tonight, also of one of these giant, monstrous, hideous, human-like, but not quite human creatures. This is from Iceland. And this was an ogress, a female. One of the trolls, she was a female. And Iceland is full of stories of female trolls that would prey on human men. Sort of gender reversal here of the story that we have here from the Kwaimi people here in California. And her name was Kraka. And Kraka, she would prey on the humans. They lived in a small village which was Baldursheim. And she would come into Baldursheim and she would take the livestock, take the cows, and they were really suffering. She'd take away entire cows and eat them. She lived in a cave up in the mountains, very far away. In fact, it was so far humans couldn't even really hike up in there. It was in these craggy rocks up at the top of the mountains. And she would take the livestock, but they say that she was man-hungry. And she would take some of the young men and try to mate with them in her cave. The young people today, they would say she was thirsty. That's the cool thing to say now. She was always looking for a man. So she would come and take a human man and take him off to her cave. She had taken several men from this village, from Baldursheim. And she had taken them, but for an ogress, I guess she was ugly even for an ogress. Because these men, they didn't want to do the deed. And they were trying to get out of it. Some of them tried to run away. Some of them even killed themselves rather than try to give Kraka children. But Kraka, she kept taking young men from this town. So she took one of them. He was a shepherd. He just kept to himself. He didn't bother anybody. But Kraka came down. She saw him. She liked what she saw. She grabbed him and she took him up to her home in the mountains. And she had him there for a long time. She would feed him, I guess her food was terrible, and I imagine mostly raw meat and vegetables, things she had taken just from the mountains out of the ground. And he ate barely what he needed to survive, but he hated eating her food, and he was really trying to resist going all the way. And he was trying to think of a way to get out of there. Now they had been up there for a while. They'd even learned some of each other's languages. She had learned some Icelandic, and he had learned whatever language the trolls speak, and they could kind of communicate with each other. But she saw that he wasn't happy. She saw that he was sad. She saw he would pick at his food. He would barely eat anything. And so Kraka, one day she asked him, she said, why don't you eat? What do you want to eat? What can I give you to make you happy? Now he said, you know what? There's one thing that would really make me happy. If I could eat this, I would stay here for years and years and years. I'd be so happy. If you could bring me a shark that's over 12 years old. Now everyone in that part of Iceland knows that it's so hard to find a shark that's over 12 years old. They're very rare. In fact, there's only one place that I wrote on my hand, Siglunis. Siglunis is the only place where you can maybe, if you're lucky, fish out a shark that's over 12 years old. And she knew that. The trolls know that. Humans know that. Everyone knows that. Siglunis, but it's very far away from Baldurskheim. To get to Siglunis, even for a troll who's giant and monstrous, but he told her if I could get that shark out of Siglunis, that would make me happy. And so she said, all right, I'll bring it for you right now. She left the cave and she went bounding off into the mountains, walking off. But as she's walking off, she thought, hey, maybe this is a trick. Maybe this human, like all of those other ungrateful humans, he's trying to run away from me. And he doesn't know what good loving is, just like all those others. So maybe it's a trick. And she went running back and came back to the cave. She peered around the edge and she saw him just sitting there patiently. Sitting, looking around at the cave. He didn't leave. He didn't run. So she went walking off towards Siglunis. She got a lot further this time, but she thought again, maybe it is a trick. She came back again, and the shepherd, he's just sitting there patient, calm, gentle as a lamb. She said, he means it. He really is waiting for this shark. So this time she walked all the way. And he was waiting. He was playing the long game. And when she walked all the way, crossed over the fjord and walked all the way to Siglunis, when he knew that enough time had passed, that's when he said, this is my chance. You know, that old movie, Sleeping with the Enemy, with Julia Roberts. She's got her window of opportunity, chance to escape. This was his chance to get away from there. So he took it, and he went running back to the village. Well, he's a human and she's a troll, so she walks faster than he does. She got back to her cave before he had even made it halfway back to Baldurskheim. She came back to the cave. She had that shark on her shoulder, but she saw that he was gone. She said, I knew it, he tricked me. And she went bounding, she went roaring, bounding across the mountains, roaring and shouting for this man to come back. He could hear her coming through the forest. He rushed, ran as fast as he could, got back to the village, came to the village, and he could hear her crashing through the trees. And she's shouting out in the troll language. She's saying, I have your shark! It's 13 years old. It's even older than 12 years old. I have it right here. Come back, human. And she's running through knocking trees over. And he gets back to the village. What am I going to do? Where do I hide? And he saw the blacksmith shop. The blacksmith shop. That's where you need to go. You should know this. This is true. Any magical creature is after you. Iron is a strong thing to ward them off. Mm-hmm. So he ran into the blacksmith shop and he picked up a red-hot poker out of the fire. And he ran out front, and the troll, she was standing right at the door, and he held it up. And he told her, I don't want your shark. I don't want any of your terrible food. If you bother any of the men in this village ever again, I'll stab this through your belly. If you ever come bother the men in this village again. And she just heard that. She hung her head. She trudged back off to her cave. And you know, nobody in Baldurskheim ever saw Kraka again. Now there's different stories about what happened. Some people say she went and found a troll, one of her own kind, that had a happy family. Some people say that she died of sadness. She just went and sat outside her cave and waited for the sun to come up and turn her to stone. But some people say that she learned a valuable lesson. And that she learned that no means no. She learned a good lesson about consent after all that experience. And she had served her well for the rest of her days. Now, what about this story? It might just be a story. All the stories of giants, they might just be stories, cautionary tales. Some people say that the Anglo-Saxons who talked about Entagiwerkas, when they would say of the ancient ruins, that they were actually seeing Roman ruins. They would see these ancient Roman ruins and they thought it was giants, because who else could build such grand things? But some people say that there's more to it. That all these stories humans tell about these giants come from a time when we did coexist with other creatures that were like us, but not entirely, like Neanderthal, which was a hominid, but not our same species. Human-like, but not quite. Oscar Wilde wrote about that time in 1920. He talked about the Neanderthal with their cunning brains, shambling gait, hairy bodies, strong teeth, and possibly cannibalistic tendencies. That may be the germ of the ogre in folklore. That's what Oscar Wilde wondered. No, that was H.G. Wells, sorry. H.G. Wells wrote that. So there may have been a time when those stories were true, and something even more chilling, if that was true in the past, maybe, just maybe, some of those creatures might have survived to this day. It might be off in the mountains in places like the Cuyamaca Mountains, just waiting for a good-looking young man to go wandering into their territory.